Hey everybody, I just wanted to post a video after I've graded a number of the essays. I'm still actually working on the essays right now. But I wanted to, after every rough draft and after every final draft, kind of go over what it was that I noticed as common errors. And so this week it was really more or less, because we haven't gone over a whole lot, I really just wanted to focus on mechanical errors at this point, because I didn't want to go through everyone's essay and just point out all the comma errors. Rather, I just pointed out, a couple, and then I was going to post this video to kind of give you some support, and then your job now is to kind of go back after watching this video and after reading my explanations in your essay to go back and try and find all of the comma errors, all the semicolon, all the punctuation, grammar mechanics, all that stuff. So here's a couple of the main ones that I found. The first one, of course, was the comma, and so bear with me. I'm not used to this. This is my other job. I work as an English tutor, so I'm not used to doing videos on this board just yet. But nonetheless, whenever you use a comma, there's really three primary reasons you do that. The very first one that nobody seems to know about is the concept of fanboys. Now, what that means is you have FANBOY, and we are well out of the screen here. So let me erase that and move that up. Where are we at there? Okay. Fan boys. So each one of these letters stands for a word, and that is for, and, nor, but, or, yet. And so now these words, 99% of the time, you're going to need a comma before them. And let me show you an example. If you were to say, I want food, period, and then you were to say, I don't have any money. Notice how these two sentences are perfectly fine on their own. If I walked up to you and said, I want food, then you know I want food. And then if I walked up and said, I don't have any money, then you're going to know I don't have any money. But if you combine these two sentences into one sentence, you have to add a fanboy at the end of the first sentence. So let me show you. The first one you'll erase, put a comma, and let's use but. That's our fanboy right there. I want food, but I don't have any money. So in that scenario, you would add a comma whenever you're combining two sentences, two complete sentences. And that can go the same for and. And is a little tricky, because here's kind of an example, non-example. An example of when you would use and is if you're combining two complete sentences. So I went home. I went to sleep. Now I could easily put a period here, put a period here. Two sentences, but if your essay reads that way, it kind of reads choppy. So it says, I went home, I went to sleep, I woke up, I got something to eat, I got in the shower, I washed my hair. All those, it sounds very, very choppy. And so in order to make your sentences a little bit more complex, you add one of the fanboys, but before you do that, you need to add a comma. So we get rid of that first period, I went home, comma, and I went to sleep. So now you've combined two complete sentences by using one of the fanboys, and because you used the fanboy, you put a comma before the fanboy. Now, when wouldn't you use a comma with the word and? That's when you're talking about two things. I like cats and dogs. If you try to put a period after cats and try to put a period after dogs, it becomes I like cats, period. So if you just walked up and said, I like cats, that's fine. But the second one, and dogs, if you just walked up to someone and said, and dogs, and then you walked away, it gets pretty weird. So that's why that doesn't work, because you're talking about two items. I like cats and dogs. Shoes and fish are sold here. Again, you wouldn't put a comma here because then it says shoes. And fish are sold here. And so in that scenario, actually, you would be talking to someone named Shoes, but I'll talk about that later. All right. So that is number one reason before a fanboy. 99% of the time, you're going to need a comma before one of those fanboys. Number 2, if you have a list, and this one's pretty easy. Oops, I like cats, comma, dogs, comma, and fish. So first off, I mean, and is a fanboy, so again, 99% of the time you put a comma before it. And so that's kind of one of them, but more so, the reason you put a comma here is because it's a list of items. And so if you were to say, I like cats, comma, dogs, comma, fish, comma, I don't know, snakes, comma, I was about to say lice. I don't want to say that. I don't like lice. What? Monsters. And princesses. Okay. So again, it's just a list. And so if you have more than 2 items, you have to put a comma. Now, there's always the question of, do you put a comma before the and or not? Since you're using MLA, yes, you put the comma before. The difference is there's an APA, and this may have changed actually. I think it has changed, but nonetheless, used to be in APA you would say I like cats, comma, dogs, and fish. But then in MLA, which is what we use, it is I like cats, comma, dogs, comma, and fish. And so that's the normal. That's what I've been doing the whole time. The problem with the APA style, and you might think I'm biased because I'm an English teacher, but nonetheless, MLA, I like that better because in APA it says I like cats, dogs, and fish. And so if it looks like you're combining dogs and fish, meaning if it's not dogs and fish, I don't like it. I only like dogs and fish. I don't like dogs separately. I don't like fish separately. I only like dogs and fish together. That's kind of how that reads most of the time, and I think that's why APA changed it. But nonetheless, if anyone ever asks, MLA, we do put the comma before the and. So that's 2, a list. Now 3, this one's a little bit more difficult. You have what they call dependent and independent clauses. A dependent clause is one that requires more information. It would be like me saying, when you get home. If I walked up to you and said, when you get home, and then I turned around and walked away, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. The first question you're going to ask is, well, what do I do when I get home? Well, that's why it's called a dependent clause, because it's dependent on more information. Anytime you have a dependent clause, you have to have a comma after your dependent clause, because that means you're also going to give a dependent clause. An independent clause. Let me show you here. So you have the dependent. Let's put DEP right here. Can you see right here? Okay. So an independent then would be wash the dishes. So if I walked up and said, wash the dishes, you didn't say okay or no, but it makes sense. But if I was to walk up and said, when you get home, and then walked away, it doesn't make sense. So that's the difference between a dependent and an independent. Independent makes sense independently, it makes sense by itself. The dependent means you need more information in order to understand it. Whenever you combine them, like you would here, when you get home, comma, wash the dishes. That's where you put a comma after a dependent clause. Here's another example. Before you leave, and that would be the dependent. An independent would be I need you to clean my room, says my daughter. Before you leave, I need you to clean my room. Now together, those make sense. I need you to clean. Oh, okay, you can see it all. Perfect. So before you leave, that's a dependent clause. If I walked up and I said, before you leave, and then walked away, you don't understand what I'm saying. The first question is going to be, what do I do before I leave? The next part I need you to clean my room. If I just walked up and said, I need you to clean my room, that makes sense. That means it's an independent clause. It makes sense independently. Dependent clause means it doesn't make sense without more information. It's dependent on more information. Every time you have a dependent clause, you have to have an independent clause that follows it. So at the end of every dependent clause, like this one, before you leave, you need a comma. Before you leave, comma, I need you to clean my room. So those are the three reasons why you would use a comma. The fanboys, a list, or the dependent clause. Now that is a very quick list. There's several more reasons why you would use a comma, but these are the three primary reasons that you'll see most often, and these are the majority of the errors that I saw. So make sure you go through your essay and look through those things. One other thing I saw was semicolons. Semicolons are actually really easy. Now this isn't the only reason. Where's the limit on my page here? Right there. Okay, I'll put a line there so I know where to write. A semicolon, that's, this guy, looks like that. You use a semicolon for numerous reasons, but the main reason, the primary reason you're going to use a semicolon is to combine two complete sentences. So remember those independent clauses? Those are called complete sentences. So if you had, I like cats, period, they are fluffy. That's two complete sentences, two independent clauses. You can walk up to someone, you can say, I like cats. That makes sense. You can walk up to someone and say, they are fluffy. You might have to point a finger, but generally that makes sense. Now, if you wanted to combine those sentences, you could put a semicolon. Instead of putting a period there, you put a semicolon. It makes the sentence more complex. It gives it a little bit, makes it sound a little less monotone whenever you're reading the essay. But the only rule for that is that the two sentences have to be closely related. So you can't say, I like cats, semicolon, where are my shoes? Those are two complete sentences. One's a question, of course. But if you put a semicolon there, they're completely unrelated. The cats, you liking cats, has nothing to do with your shoes at all. So a semicolon really shouldn't be used there because they're not closely enough related. It doesn't make any sense. You really only combine sentences that are close related. Here's one more example. Let's see. Let's combine all of them. Let's do a dependent, independent, and a semicolon. When you get home, now that's a dependent clause, meaning it doesn't make sense by itself, so you know something else is coming, meaning you need a comma. When you get home, make sure you brush your teeth. Now that's an independent clause. It makes sense by itself. If I walked up and said, make sure you brush your teeth, tell my daughter that on a daily basis. So it's a complete sentence. It makes sense. However, you don't have to put a period here. If you want to, if you have a closely enough related sentence that's coming next, you can put a semicolon. They stink. Okay, so it makes perfect sense for you to say, when you get home, make sure you brush your teeth. They stink. It would be kind of awkward for you to pause and stop. It's a point where you choose not to stop the sentence for a significant reason. In this case, the reason is that those sentences are very closely related, makes your sentences a little bit more complex, and it helps you to avoid that monotone sound whenever you're writing your essays or whenever a person's reading your essays. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, paragraphing. So that's semicolons. Last but not least, I had a lot of questions about, how do I separate my paragraphs? When should I separate my paragraphs? How do I know? I'm going to move the camera back a little bit. Generally, the way that you figure this out is that in the typical essay, you're going to have three parts. You're going to have one, the topic sentence. That is the sentence that tells what the entire paragraph's about. If you're going to talk about, like say your thesis is everyone needs to vote against gun laws. Your first reason is that people need guns for protection. Well, if that's one of your reasons, then you need a paragraph to describe that reason. And so in this case, your first paragraph is going to be about how people need guns for protection. So your topic sentence is going to be something along those lines. One reason why we shouldn't ban guns is because people need guns for protection. There's your topic sentence. That tells the reader what that paragraph is going to be about. Now the next part, explain and spend 2 to 3 sentences at minimum explaining your point. So whatever your topic sentence was, that's the point of the paragraph. Now that you've said the point, people need to use guns for protection, now you need to explain that. It's not enough for you to just tell me. I need some evidence. So one reason, your topic sentence, one reason why people need guns is because they use guns for protection. Now you start explaining why it is people need guns for protection. One might live in a bad neighborhood, for example, and there may be risk for a break-in. If someone were to break into an individual's home who owns a gun, they would be able to protect themselves and their family against these intruders. So that's just a way that you can kind of explain your point, give a little bit of substance to your actual point. Now 3 is your transition. That is the point where you go from explaining one point to introducing another point in a new paragraph. So let's say that your first one is protection. So a majority of this paragraph, at least 4 or 5 sentences, 3 or 4 sentences, are going to be about gun protection. Now this transition, let's say our next paragraph's about hunting. People need it to hunt food. People need guns to hunt food. You don't necessarily need a gun, I suppose, but bear with me for this example. Since your next paragraph is going to be about hunting, and you're going to have a topic sentence about hunting, and then you're going to explain hunting, you're going to need a transition to get from protection to hunting, because those are 2 very different topics. So your transition is going to be something along the lines of, while protection is one significant reason why people might need guns, another reason is that many people use guns to hunt animals for food. And so that would be your transition at that point. Now it's time to start a new paragraph. So you start a new paragraph, and now we need a new topic sentence. So what I like to suggest for people to do, if they're having trouble figuring out where to break one paragraph into another, go through and look for your topic sentences. Find your 2 main points, because if you've outlined and you've organized your essay, you should know what your points are. So in this one, I know my points for supporting gun laws, or what was I saying? Oh, going against a gun ban are because people need guns for protection and for hunting. I know that I'm going to have another one, and I know what my main points are. So I can go through the essay and find out, okay, where do I stop talking about protection and start talking about hunting? Once I find that area, I can then break my paragraphs off, and that's a good place to start a new paragraph. So those are the 3 things that I really found that a lot of people had trouble with: commas, semicolons, and just paragraphing. So this was a quick rundown of those things. If you have any further questions, let me know, and I can post other videos like this. I'm pretty much in a classroom all day, so I have access to a whiteboard pretty much 24/7 until I get home, and then I can still make videos there. So if you need something, please let me know, and I can go over it in class, well, in my class, and I can post it online for you guys. So again, let me know if you have any questions, and enjoy the rest of the semester.